And President Trump has slammed Keir Starmer as no Winston Churchill after the Prime Minister stalled on backing his war on Iran.
And I'm not, by the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, the lease, okay, he made it for whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him. And it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
Well, the US president accused the Prime Minister of ruining relationships after he initially refused to allow US bombers to use Diego Garcia, that's the joint military base on the Chagos Islands, to launch strikes on Tehran.
Well, it comes as the US consulate in Dubai was set on fire in a drone strike.
Whilst Keir Starmer has responded to the attack of an RAF base in Cyprus by drafting an HMS Dragon as support.
Well, on the Late Show Live, President Trump's political advisor, Jason Miller, said Britain's slow start could harm the special relationship.
The US and the UK are supposed to have the special relationship. In a moment, a very critical key moment, when the US needed the UK, Keir Starmer made sure that the UK was not there for the US. We know that the UK has now allowed their bases to be used for some of the efforts, but in certain respects, it's a little too late. There was a moment when the US really needed the UK. And once you do that, in President Trump's eyes, it's really tough to put that toothpaste back in the tube.
Well, joining us now is GBNews national reporter Charlie Peters. Morning to you, Charlie. HMS Dragon has been drafted in. What's taken so long?
Well, we actually understand that Dragon won't go until at least early next week.
Oh.
GBNews sources at the MOD were telling to us yesterday it would sail not before at least 24 hours, but the Navy Lookout, highly reliable Navy Lookout website, reported last night that it could take until at least early next week to get Dragon on the move. Now, we have 6 of these Type 45 destroyers, highly developed, very extremely prepared destroyers when they're available. 3 of them have been totally out of action for a long time. One of them's been in dock longer than it's been on operations, but both Dragon and Duncan were the 2 most likely to go. We originally believed it would be HMS Duncan. However, we understand now that actually she's going through an updated maintenance and refit period and is actually earmarked to deploy on Operation Firecrest, which was this very hastily organised operation in the high north. You'll recall, obviously, earlier this year, we had to react very suddenly to President Trump talking about threats to Greenland and the High North and him needing to be there. So it's another example of the British military being stretched and moving around in reaction to Donald Trump. But on the issue of Dragon, why did Dragon not go? Well, she's been rushed out of her maintenance period. She's been in the Upper Harbour ammunition facility, restocking, rearming over the last couple of days. Now, we understand that these options were presented to the government by the Navy to say, you can send this destroyer to the Eastern Mediterranean, as it was telegraphed very clearly by the Americans that this strike was coming. It's no open secret that this has been going on. It's been open non-secret for a long time.
But however, it for weeks.
But we understand that the Navy was told, and the commanders were told, that actually HMS Dragon was preferred for NATO operations, NATO Maritime Group 1. It was earmarked for that role instead. They preferred to keep it on that ambition rather than change its role and redeploy it to the Eastern Mediterranean. That has transpired to be a tremendous strategic and tactical error. There are serious questions now, not only for government ministers who have to approve all deployments, but also for military planners at Permanent Joint Headquarters in Northwood, PGHQ, and also civil servants and commanders in the Ministry of Defence more generally at the Admiralty to answer why this ship was not deployed urgently, or at least other assets urgently, to the Eastern Mediterranean when we knew that at Krotiri, that RAF base in Cyprus, but also other assets in the region and personnel would be at risk. Now, we've heard from the Prime Minister yesterday reacting to this, I'd say 4 days late to deploy Dragon once she is ready, but also a couple of helicopters, 2 Lynx Wildcats that have counter-drone capabilities. That's welcome. I think that C-17 transporting those vehicles might have landed last night. We're still awaiting confirmation on that. But that still doesn't defeat the ballistic missile threat that we're facing on that base. We can shoot down drones. 2 were shot down approaching, although 1 did hit the runway on Sunday night. We can also shoot down cruise missiles with the capabilities that Britain has there, the RAF Typhoons, F-35s, and of course those helicopters as well, and some ground-based air defence systems. But ballistic missiles, the key threat within the Iranian arsenal, and we believe that Hezbollah, the proxy in Lebanon, still has some of them too, might have fired a ballistic missile into northern Israel yesterday. We're not that far away in RAF Akrotiri. That threat remains, and it can't be defeated as it stands. It'll be at least 7 days for one of these ships to get out there. And if it is not leaving until early next week, it could mean that British personnel are facing up to 2 weeks being unprotected from ballistic missiles.
I mean, in effect, we're relying on the US, aren't we? They've got a substantial number of ships out there. We're relying on protection from the US if they start firing ballistic missiles.
And the Hellenic Navy of Greece, who have 2 very well-developed frigates in the region. One of them only launched in January, fresh out of the dock, fresh out of being developed. It's now available. It will be in Cyprus already defending that island. This does put not only our strategic and tactical positioning at risk, but it also puts our relationship with Cyprus at grave risk. That sovereign base area we have in Akrotiri and Deucalion to the east of the island, it's not popular with everyone in Cyprus, as you might imagine, having British sovereign territory on their island. There will be many people in Cyprus now saying, if the British government cannot keep us safe, cannot defend this island, which is required under the 1960 treaty, security of the island, then why on earth do we have them here? We're already losing Chagos potentially, although I expect that deal will be put on hold. If we were to lose RAF Akrotiri, or for to be a start of serious negotiations there, due to this security blunder, that would be another tremendous risk to our standing in the world.
All right. Charlie, for now, thank you very much indeed.
Well, joining us now is former Royal Navy officer Dr. Steve Aiken. Very good morning to you, Steve. Do you agree with President Trump that Keir Starmer is no Winston Churchill?
I don't think anybody thinks Keir Starmer is Winston Churchill. And we've just seen trying to get a warship out to Cyprus, which, you know, I used to be a fleet planner. And if I go back to the days of 9/11, by the time the second aircraft had crashed into the World Trade buildings, we were already beginning to arrange to move a TLAM-fitted submarine all the way out to the Arabian Gulf. And, you know, it might have been a bit Nelsonian on our approach, but we made it move. And I have no doubt the Royal Navy, because they are still the professional planners that we always were, and are fully aware of what was going on, knew what was happening in the Middle East, knew what the United States and Israel were about to do, and should have had ships pre-deployed. And I think the Royal Navy tried to have those ships pre-deployed. I've no other information. I can't say that I'm across fleet plans anymore, but that would have been stopped at the political level. And we seem to be run by a cult of lawyers.
But why then, I mean, even if there was no pre-deployment, why then this delay in even Dragon's still in Portsmouth, isn't she? I mean,
yeah.
Why this huge delay when we are talking about protecting one of our own bases?
And here's the point about Akrotiri as well. We have air defence systems. We have ground-based air defence systems like Sky Sabre. We have anti-drone capabilities. We know that other people are using both Wildcat helicopters and Apache helicopters to deal with drones. None of them have been out there either. And the reality is, this isn't on the military. This is on our government, because I can assure you that options would have been given to ministers that said, this is what we can do. This is when we can do it. Let's do it. And I would imagine exactly the same conversation was going around about RAF Fairford and particularly Diego Garcia. Just seems to be our Prime Minister is reason d'etre is to give away stuff we already own.
Does it look to you as though Britain it has been chasing now the French and the Greek, who stepped up yesterday and said that they would be heading to Cyprus to help defend the RAF base there?
Look, I don't know if you saw it, but there was a clip on TV a couple of days ago with President Macron in front of a ballistic missile submarine when they all were singing the Marseillaise. And it was a very clear indication that France has decided to take leadership. So it's sending a carrier battle group all the way through into the Mediterranean. It's sending fighter aircraft to support and defend Cyprus. All these things are happening right now. What are we doing? We're just sitting around and sending a destroyer that's not going to get there for 10 days.
In terms of our political strategy with the attacks on Iran, do you think there is, Keir Starmer has any solid position when he says, look, from a legal perspective, from our own British perspective, we're happy to do what we can in terms of defence, but we do not want to be involved in any direct action. We don't want to be, bringing in regime change from the skies. Is that a justifiable position?
Look, could you imagine Tony Blair saying that? The last Labour Prime Minister was in a position like that. Can you imagine sort of Margaret Thatcher saying that? Absolutely not. Once the fighting had started, I'd put it this way, it's not as if this had come to a surprise to us. We've got pretty good intelligence services. We knew that Cyprus would be under threat. We knew British interests would be under threat. And we knew the United States would be calling on us for our specific assets we have in the region. To be doing this is the worst of all worlds. Being dragged into it and then sort of having some kind of lawyer's view about whether we're going to use the force or not. It's absolutely ridiculous. And if I was in the United States right now, I'd be thinking, what's the point of us sort of expending all this effort and working with the UK when it's not there when we need them?
There are some calls this morning, growing calls, for a parliamentary investigation as to why the British Armed Forces and the Royal Navy were unable to provide any protective umbrella over RAF Akrotiri. Would you support calls for that investigation?
I don't think we need to waste the time having a parliamentary investigation. We know the reasons. Both the Conservative government and the Labour government completely undercut our defence for years. Look, when Russia invaded Ukraine, that should have been the wake-up call. That should have been, here's the alarm bell, team. Let's start building up our defences. Let's start getting up towards 5% of GDP spent on defence. What have we been doing for the last 4 years? We've been sitting on our hands. And one of my biggest concerns is we may have left it too little too late.
OK. Dr. Steve Aitken, really good to get your perspective this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, let's bring in former Israeli government spokesperson Colonel Miri Eisin, who is in Tel Aviv for us this morning. Miri, good to see you this morning. We were trying to speak to you yesterday, weren't we? And then you got an alarm, you got an alert on your phone, didn't you? Give us a sense of what it's been like since Saturday in Tel Aviv.
So of all of the things that I talk on TV, my getting up and leaving your show is the one that goes viral. I find that amusing. What it shows is that we're responsible. It means that we get an early alert when it is a missile from Iran. We have a good 5 to 7 minutes before it arrives in the area. 5 to 7 minutes doesn't sound like a long time, but for me that means that I get up from where I'm sitting in my study, I walk to the local bomb shelter, which is around a 3-minute walk away, and then then the siren goes off. The local siren is very strong, very scary. Everything comes into our phones. There's a whole system that goes in. I know that they've done similar things now that are working that way in the Gulf. Here in Israel, we've kind of been living this way for the last 2.5 years. When it comes to an Iranian missile, you go to the bomb shelter. 1.5 tons coming into Tel Aviv where it's hit, or into Bet Shemesh. People were killed in Tel Aviv, killed in Bet Shemesh. They've been hitting, but most of them have been intercepted on the way, so you act responsibly.
I was going to say, how effective have Israeli defence issues been? I mean, we talk about the Iron Dome. I know it's not impenetrable, but nevertheless, it's an incredible system. Just how successful has the defence of Israel been through all the last few days?
For all of us, it's been very strong. I hate talking in statistics. People are killed, and that's a horrible thing. But when you talk about the interceptions, over 95% intercepted. I want for everybody to understand that means that 5% does get through, and that's that actual warhead, that 1.5 tons hitting into Tel Aviv or Bet Shemesh, where it killed 9 people, and people in a bomb shelter. When it hits, it's very effective. But we have different layers of defense. It's Iron Dome. Dome is short range. There's one called David Sling, one called Arrow, and one that was only deployed for the first time now, which is a system which actually uses laser, and it's been trying to down drones more than missiles. So we do feel that Israel is invested in systems that are only to protect. That's what they do. They stop the incoming drones and the incoming missiles. And together with that, you still go to the bomb shelter. There's fallout from the interceptors. That's why it's so important to be inside.
Can you bring us up to speed with the situation in Lebanon? Because yesterday we saw IDF troops move into the south of the country, didn't we?
We did, and that has to do with the fact that Hezbollah took a choice, and let's be clear, they made the choice. They did not have to do so, and I don't care if it's because the Islamic regime told them to. They decided to join in. When they joined in night before last, what they did is they fired into Israel, both missiles, rockets, and drones, and they've been doing so, including this morning. There have been missiles and rockets fired from Lebanon into Israel by Hezbollah. Israel has gone on the attack against Hezbollah. It's not against Lebanon. You hear the Lebanese voices, the Lebanese president, the Lebanese prime minister trying to say that they don't support Hezbollah. They actually outlawed Hezbollah right before Hezbollah joined in. So we are acting, and part of our protecting those northern communities that are right on the border. You know, they're a couple hundred meters from the border, and that's where you had on the other side Hezbollah Radwan forces, the remnants of them, because we've already operated there. We've gone in to make sure that they don't try to attack, invade. This is a real danger that we were very worried about throughout the war itself. And right now it's there to protect. It's not there to stay in Lebanon. It's not there forever. It's there to go in, protect the people up north. And in the meantime, Hezbollah is firing rockets, missiles, happily drones. We are intercepting. I was listening before to the other gentleman, and we do intercept drones both by helicopters, and I think that we actually are trying to do so now with our new laser system. All of those are to protect. So the force is in there to protect the north.
OK, Miri Ison, we've got to leave it there, but we do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very
so
much.
much.